But to go past to Pluto, I mean, when they didn't have telescopes, is kind of a stretch, I think.
Well, how about any planets when they didn't have telescopes? To look at to look at Mars when they didn't have telescopes is a big stretch, no? I mean, I'm not, look, this is all just...
It's quite red. You can see it in the ecliptic plane. You can see it tonight.
Yeah, you could see that there's something up there, but you can't see what orbit it is and where it surrounds and, what other planets are around it, and Jupiter
all the planets lying in the ecliptic plane. So the ancients were pretty smart. They figured out that all the planets lie in a straight line that cuts across the southern sky called the ecliptic plane.
Yeah, but to look at it without a telescope, and to figure out what size it is and where the orbit is, that sounds almost impossible, doesn't it? Sounds pretty crazy.
More time
they didn't know the size of these things. They just did the relative orientations and the angles of these various planets.
Do you have an internet connection? Do you have an internet connection right now? Are you online?
Pardon?
Are you online right now in front of us?
Filming something.
No, I'm on a cell phone right now. We're filming sci-fi science for the Science Channel.
Yeah. I would love you to look at that image and see what you think of it. It's good. It's pretty trippy. It's really a star. It's a sun, and it shows these planets around it. Who knows what the fuck they did know?
There is a danger that Westerners put too much into indigenous culture's accomplishments. For example, the Mayan calendar. I think that the Westerners have hijacked the Mayan calendar and created all this mythology that doesn't exist concerning the Mayan calendar. The Mayans did not know where the center of the Milky Way galaxy was. They didn't know the orientation of the Earth, so on and so forth, with respect to the galaxy. These are Western refinements imposed upon an indigenous culture's astronomy.
Yeah, I always thought that it's very interesting that people look to the Mayans to figure out when the end of civilization is going to come, when they couldn't even figure out when the end of their civilization would come. I mean, they disappeared over 1,000 years ago. Not only that, they were playing soccer with human heads.
It was meant to be the beginning of a new cycle.
It's a new age,
It was meant to be celebration rather than doomsday.
So the end of the long count.
Basically, Doctor, what you're saying basically is that the ancients were a bunch of boobs who got lucky with a few charts.
They did predict that movie.
No, the ancients were very good with their calendar. They were able to get out to Saturn. They had the eclipses correct. They were very, very good out to Saturn. But beyond Saturn, you needed a telescope.
What do you think about these ideas that all these ancient cultures talk about a previously existing, much more advanced civilization that was wiped out, like Atlantis, and they talk about it in Sumer, another civilization? What do you think about these people that think that there have been many different stages of humanity and that we've been wiped out by cataclysmic disasters and then had to rebuild?
Well, the flood mythology goes back to the tale of Gilgamesh, which goes back to the 27th century BC. It's perhaps the oldest epic story of all time, and it talks about a great flood, the search for immortality, the great flood, and this, of course, then takes us back to before the Bible. And many people think that perhaps the Bible's talking about the Great Flood comes from the tale of Gilgamesh. So, yeah, I mean, there are tales of these things. And also, if you go to the Caspian Sea, at the end of the Ice Age, there was a massive breakdown of one of the lakes after the end of the Ice Age, which could have created the legend mentioned in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Right, but it is also possible that we have been almost wiped out many times in the past by giant meteor impacts and things of that such, right?
Well, if you take a look at the fact that all humans are almost all the same, any two monkeys are quite different, any two foxes are quite different. We are almost the same genetically speaking, which meant there was a bottleneck. About 70,000 years ago, some people think there was a volcano that erupted in Indonesia that wiped out most Homo sapiens, leaving only a few hundred to populate the entire Earth. So there is a theory that's pretty much accepted by many people in biotechnology, that only a few hundred people survived the cataclysm. We don't know what. Perhaps a volcano.
There's so many things that could jack us. That earthquake in Yellowstone that's had 2,000 fucking earthquakes over the last since January. There's a gigantic caldera volcano in Yellowstone National Park, 600 kilometers wide.
That's about to blow.
Yeah, it erupts on a scale of a few 100,000 years, and
600,000 to 800,000.
We are overdue for another eruption.
Yeah,
but there is a supervolcano under Yellowstone,
and it's a continent killer, right?
It would it would rip the heart out of the United States if it erupted.
Wow, it's a continent killer, like literally, it kills like everything. Gophers live.
That's why I have property in Canada.
And it's happened in the past.
Yeah.
It's not science fiction. It's happened in the past.
Yeah, every 600,000 to 800,000 years, it blows. I mean, they only figured it out that it was a giant volcano, really, like within the last couple of decades, right? It was like satellite imagery, wasn't it?
Yeah, there are a few supervolcanoes that in principle could wipe out the United States. Yellowstone is one. Another one is in the Canary Islands. If an island there collapses, it'll set off a tsunami which will inundate most of the Northeast. And so these are very, very credible dangers that we have to worry about. But again, on a time scale of thousands of years. But it's something that, it does give you pause knowing that if Yellowstone blew up, it would rip the heart out of the United States of America.
It's, the way I look at it is like human beings are like, we live in an anthill. There's an anthill that's in the middle of a field, and the ants in the anthill, they've only lived for a couple weeks, and this is all they've ever known. The anthill's always been there.
Yeah.
And one day, some little fat kid comes walking through the field and just stomps the shit out of that anthill. And you know what? It just happens. They never saw it coming, and life is forever changed.
Joe,
And that's us.
you're hysterically funny. You're very bright. Listening to you, I just want to go home and weep. I just want to sit in a corner and just weep.
It just makes you appreciate the time that you have here.
Yeah, I love this stuff. The mushrooms.
Oh, by the way, can I say something?
Yeah.
It was mentioned to me that you had a discussion about a living planet, right? If you take a look at the movie Avatar, many people miss this. Sigourney Weaver warns the troopers in the movie Avatar that the planet is alive, that it has a central nervous system, and that's why everyone has a tail. The tail connects you to the central nervous system so you can upload. You can upload and download with the planet. And that's how at the end of the movie, the planet is able to coordinate an attack against the Star Troopers. So here is an example of a living planet with the nervous system that is capable of coordinating an attack. Now, whether or not evolutionary biology allows this, of course, we can ask James Cameron if he thinks it's plausible. But it is a mechanism that they use in the movie Avatar to show how a planet could be alive.
Well, if you do mushrooms, the planet feels alive. Have you ever done mushrooms?
I can't hear. I'm eating the water.
I can't
the answer.
We were asking you if you've ever done mushrooms.
Well,
no.
Psychedelic mushrooms, they would help you so much.
I'm a physicist. I like to keep my head as clear as possible.
Oh, it'll clear it up.
Well, Joe's got a theory on cows and mushrooms.
Well, it's not really my theory, but there are theories that mushrooms are literally life forms that have psilocybin mushrooms that are life forms that have come here from another planet, like on an asteroid, and that's one of the reasons why they have this profound effect on human beings. That when you're eating them, you're really taking in some sort of an alien consciousness.
But if you sequence the DNA of the mushroom, you find that the proteins and the nucleic acids are the same ones that are found in your body. So believe it or not, you and a mushroom are made out of the same basic stuff.
It's very similar to brain chemistry. Well, mushrooms, with the compound in psilocybin mushrooms is very similar to actual human neurochemistry, right? The chemicals produced by the brain, the dimethyltryptamine is produced by the brain, and mushrooms are 4-foxphoroaloxy-NN dimethyltryptamine.
Well, the reason why psychedelic drugs work is because they're able to go past the blood-brain barrier, and they're able to set off the synapses between the neurons. So basically, you're short-circuiting the brain. So think of a computer, and you set off every single circuit inside the computer. You fry it, right? Well, that's cocaine. That's what drugs do. They basically either set off all the neurons simultaneously, giving you the high, or they can be a depressant like heroin. But, my personal point of view is, why do we have to get a high artificially when we can get a high on life? In life itself,
life can't get you as high as mushrooms. If you're doing something in life that's getting you as high as mushrooms, you need to write a book about it because it's not the same. But I understand what you're saying about heroin and cocaine. These are very destructive, but psychedelic compounds are very, very different than narcotic drugs. Very different reactions to the body, very different reactions as far as like what you learn from them. When you have psychedelic experiences, they're very eye-opening, very, very awakening, and a lot of people believe that they're agents of evolution, that they actually help you evolve.
Well, my attitude is that we have virtual reality. That is, we can create artificial worlds, but afterwards we turn the computer off and go back to living again. It's like an amusement entertainment, right? However, with the psychedelic drugs, you don't know what it does to the brain. It has remnants, it has lingering effects, and plus, it doesn't necessarily give you deeper insights into reality. It's just another reality. Now, I'm a physicist. I want to decode our reality. And to do that, my brain has to be as clear as possible in order to understand.
You're acting under the assumption that psychedelic drugs somehow do not make your brain clear or fog it up somehow or ruin it.
Well, I don't want my heart surgeon on mushrooms when he's walking into the room. That I can tell you.
That's a good call. But, mushrooms only last a few hours.
But remember, no great scientific principle discovered by somebody high on drugs.
Is that true? Wasn't the didn't Crick? Who was the guy that sequenced LSD, or the guy who was on LSD when he figured out DNA?
No, Francis Crick and James Watson were not on LSD.